Hey guys, welcome to the PiG Daily, episode number 48, and today we are going to be looking at Mage's TvT. Thank you everyone for hanging out. My Twitch chat is dying for some reason, so I'm gonna have to have a extra window, which I'm gonna have to glance up on my second monitor, and it does look like all the technical stuff's working quite okay for now. Mic is on and all that stuff. So yeah, we're going to be looking at Mage's technical harassment in TvT. I haven't done a TvT episode in forever or ever, besides the What If Wednesdays I did with Kelazor and Iagaz. I don't know. But I was thinking about how there was a round of 8 match between Major and Hero Marine at Montreal. Oh my god, 2 Terrans playing in the top 8. And yeah, I heard it was a pretty good match. So I finally went through and watched the VODs and watched the replays. And I think even though Hero Marine did win the set, I was really kind of just struck by a lot of the technical pressures and layers of harassment that Major builds into his play, and I just thought it was really cool. So I want to talk to you guys about that, and yeah, let's dive on into games. So one thing I did notice, by the way, oh, whoa, there we go. One thing I did notice is that last week we were testing out that whole idea of let's do 20-minute episodes.
Get wrecked, get wrecked, get wrecked, get wrecked. First donation of the day, of course provided by Dayway. Loving you, my troublesome. Let's watch the show and have some fun.
Thank you.
Forever in love. Dayway less than 3.
Oh my god, thank you very much. And I'm just gonna make sure, okay, at least the follow alerts are turned off. It's okay, we can get into the meat of this show then. I should probably turn off the voice reading as well during this, but whatever, we'll sort that out later. So guys, we are kind of really enjoying the 20-minute episodes, usually up to sometimes up to 30 minutes, because obviously you guys know me. If I say an episode's going to be 20 minutes, it's going to be 30 minutes. Up to about 40 minutes, potentially with question time. But usually I want the main content of the show to be 20 to 30 minutes long. And I think that 20 to 40 minute sweet spot is pretty good. I had a lot of feedback from people last week who can't normally watch the show, and they were like, you know what, I really like this format. I can actually keep up with it. I can continue to watch the show, and just generally the information is more synthesized. It's more kind of compressed, so it just feels more useful, I think, to a lot of people to watch. So it's definitely something I'm going to be trying out today as well, and trying to kind of get that as the new norm for the daily. So anyway, guys, we are starting here on King Sejong. Now, this is a map, and keep in mind, Major does different things on every map, where there's just so many exposed bases. You've got angles here to come in from air, you've got so many drop paths, as well as angles to come in on all the different mineral lines. And that's really what makes this map very good for aggressive play. Of course, before we go any further, I should also say, by the way, Major's favorite player is TY. A lot of his play is very TY inspired and kind of learnt from. Major's one of these guys. You always hear the commentators talk about how he learns from the Korean leagues, and he will just copy builds like exactly. He will refine them so much and execute them so well. So a lot of what we're going to see is definitely something you may have seen in the Korean leagues a little bit before, especially if you watch a lot of TY games. But this is the first chance I get to actually get my hands on some replays of some good high-level TvT in the last few months, so it should be very good. So in this particular game, Major's going to be opening up with a gas first. Now let's go back and look at this specific opening, because this is an insanely fast second gas. So he goes for the standard gas first, just whenever you can get the money after your depot's down, straight into barracks, and then he actually goes for a 17-second gas before even 1 minute into the game. And now that's really fascinating to me. Basically, Major here just opening up with a lot of gas, wants to get a lot of aggression going. And having 2 gases mining this early is going to allow him to open up with many different, different forms of tech. And in this particular scenario, we're going to be seeing a Cloaked Banshee opening. Makes perfect sense. We were talking about the map before, and how there's lots of angles to come in from. And what I really like about the way Major does these pressures is they're usually not all in. They're usually just kind of heavy pressure. He does throw down his command center here at 25 supply. Gets a tech lab immediately on the factory. A reactor on that barracks after 2 Reapers were built. Built a single Hellion as well before the factory built the tech lab. Starts the starport. very soon after that tech lab goes down. The tech lab did take priority. And it just starts a siege tank and a medevac, as well as marine production. So this is just a very kind of flexible opening where you're getting a mixture of units. Early on, you've got the 2 Reapers and that Hellion. The Hellion has gone across the map to scout. Here a Marine comes across to scout. Notice how Major didn't feel like he needs to use these Reapers aggressively. This is something I know a lot of lower level players especially are still using Reapers in TvT very much like they used to be used back in HOTS, back in Wings, where it's this unit that's just for scouting and then you don't care about it anymore. However, in early TvT, Reapers are one of your best tools. They're one of the units which keep you the absolute safest. So even if you're doing a very aggressive build like Major is, just keeping those 2 Reapers at home acts as a really good tool of safety because they're KD8 charges, they're bombs. You can throw those down on ramps to just buy so much time against aggression. It can just make so much work. And here we see Major even do a little hop in the back. Hero Marine with a big screw up, not putting an extra depot down there. And just dives straight on into this mineral line and actually gets to damage a whole bunch of SCVs, wasting a lot of mining time. While at the same time, coming in with just a very light pressure. All this is 4 Marines and a tank evac. But he's going to come in here and poke. Now this is not some crazy sort of pressure that's ever going to kill your opponent. But the thing is, this base is so exposed, you can drop here, you can kill a bunch of SCVs. You've got over here, you can drop with the tank. If your opponent doesn't have a Viking out especially, then they can't really chase off the medevac at all, and you can just dance around being super annoying. Likewise, if you get into their main base, they don't have any units around, sometimes you can just kill heaps of stuff. So this is just a very nice little pressure, which has the potential to put a lot of damage on, but it's not really a huge commitment by any stretch of the imagination. Bit of a screwed up pickup there from Major. Should have waited for that to shoot the Cyclone. He actually misjudged it and picked up too early. But he's just being super annoying here. Trying to distract. Trying to force damage. 2 Vikings do come out and he realizes, oh crap, I gotta get out of here. And he doesn't really kill that much. In fact, the Cyclone and Marines come, they even kill that tank and that Widowmine. And this is kind of a pattern we see in Major's games actually, is him losing a lot of units, sometimes without really feeling like they get the kind of the goal done of the push or the pressure. What made me interested about this though is that because he's always kind of a bit greedy behind the aggression, Major really kind of uses aggression in TvT to force responses, to force hiccups in his opponent, but also like it gives the potential to get that big damage I talked about. And throughout this series, Hero Marine kept defending like really well, but even when he screws up, he uses it to create space for himself, and he's always a little bit greedy behind that. Something which he does very often is he just goes and builds this 3rd command center right on location during the pressure. He says, you know what, my whole build, especially in this game, is based around keeping you on your side of the map. And you know what? TvT is so hard to defend. Like, it's so awkward with these tank evacs, like, positioning around in weird places. What he does through this pressure is he constantly sees the state of his opponent's army. He sees what they've gone for. He knows what threats there are from potential counterattacks because he's, you know, actually been in their face, pressuring them, forcing their units to defend. But then he also just has a next wave of aggression lined up. And it's not like a Banshee beats a Cyclone, 2 Vikings, and a bunch of Marines. But it's the fact that he's not going to engage the army. He's going to constantly hit the mineral lines over and over again with this technical harass. He comes in here, grabs just 1 SCV, and unfortunately for him, there's 3 Vikings and a Cyclone out. Hero Marine playing super safe here. But he just runs away, waits for Cloak. Does go down, but wastes a scan. Scan is about 170 minerals. That plus an SCV, not amazing, but he kept hurrying back for a little bit. And what we're going to see a little bit later is continued Banshee production, and he's just going to keep on building them. And he's going to keep coming in over and over again. Of course, before this, he does have to deal with the counterattack from Hero Marine. And things here almost do get very dicey. This is the sort of counterattack which sometimes can screw you up if you're playing like Major, where you're kind of going for that 3rd CC, going for double eBay, and you're still only on a single barracks production. But really clutch reaction by him. Pulls down a whole lot of SCVs, just repairs the crap out of this siege tank. And Hero Marine, I think with a little bit of a mistake, could have actually focused that siege tank earlier when the SCVs were first pulling down with his unsiege tanks, but everyone makes mistakes once in a while. But here we go. as long as he doesn't die at home and he can defend, Banshees come in more and more. Killed another 6 SCVs there, and there's going to be more and more Banshees. Another Banshee coming out. Another one building at the same time. And this is really cool because it just allows him to force Hero Marine to stay at home. You know, in terms of his focus, it gets the potential to get big damage done. And once again, it just creates that space where, keep in mind, 7 minutes into the game, only just got his next 2 barracks going, only just got Stim and Combat Shield started, and only will be adding those extra 2 barracks now. I just really like this this kind of waves of aggression. Hit with like a little medevac marine poke, come in with Banshees. But also, once he gets to the mid-game, Major kind of sticks with the same philosophy of just keep on attacking. And that's something which I think, in TvT especially, is a fantastic approach to have. Because TvT is a matchup where it is so hard to defend against the high-speed tanky danks, the medevacs dropping the siege tanks in your base. It's very easy to get caught out of position and really mess something up. So, yeah, it's just something which can work out very well. And this is just going to be so annoying as Hero Marine. Keep in mind, guys, Hero Marine could have built a Raven with this this playstyle. But he was also hemmed into a corner this whole early game. He didn't really have a lot of scouting until he did that counter push. He's been forced to drop scans to check the production of Major because he's kind of been on the back foot. But if he did get a Raven out, there's a decent chance Major would have cut that Banshee production a hell of a lot earlier. Once again, though, we see here, if his opponent makes any mistakes, if they take any little bits of damage, Major is absolutely unrelenting. Doesn't even have Stim finished or 1-1. He's just coming in here. He's just walked across the map with 3 tanks and a handful of Marines. And he's just going to start trying to force these trades. And you can also see the power of aggression here. In that, look at this. Hero Marine's built 6 Vikings. He's way overcommitted to the Vikings. Why? Because he's had Banshees running into his base all game long. So that's something you've got to look out for as well, is whenever you're attacking your opponent, you're kind of forcing them into things. It's very easy to force your opponent to overcommit in one direction. And then you can kind of take advantage of that in other ways as well. So in this particular scenario, we see that medevac production started very late for Major, but these 6 Vikings, they do almost nothing for Hero Marine here. Yeah, you can land them. They're one of the crappiest fights in actual engagements, but it's just something where you can force these over responses and then you can gain position. And even though technically it's not like he has the far superior army, he's got like, what do we have? We've got 6 tanks for Major versus 2 tanks for Hero Marine. How many Marines has he got here? He's got like, what, 11 Marines and 2 tanky danks versus 4 tanks and 8 Marines. So in terms of army supply right here at the fight, Hero Marine really should be able to just reject him and throw him away from his base, but unfortunately having to attack into just a really kind of poor position. And good siege tank firing there from Major. That was actually a really cute. Check this out. This siege tank up here, I'm quite sure he's going to focus fire that. Let's go on to Major's camera view. Let's put that on normal speed. Yeah, he clicked there. This is something you'll also see Major do all the time. He'll always try and focus fire on the big clumps of Marines to get that maximum splash damage. See here, he's just microing his Marines, queued up some more Marines in the midst of the action. Now he selects the tanks, and you can see him actually start to click on some of these Marines. He's going to do it right here on that Marine. Bam. You see that little red box? You can barely see it under the explosion. I don't know if you guys can even see it, but I can. Just little things like that really do allow him to get a lot of value. And even though this gets held, keep in mind what has been the story of this game, guys. It has been Major being untouched all game long, constantly on his opponent's side of the map. Even when, say, the first tank, it didn't really do anything. He killed, like, nothing. Wait, did he even kill a few? I think he might have killed a few SCVs with it, but he killed next to nothing with the first tank and 4 Marines. But he kept Hero Marine back. He is able to get that 3rd command center on location. Behind this, he's just been building SCVs constantly. He's actually built way too many. 75 SCVs. 66 is more than enough as a Terran player, unless you're getting like a 6-minute 4th base. It doesn't really make sense to go past that count. But, you know, you can see kind of the idea here. He's just been macroing crazy hard. He's got his 1-1 finished. He's actually forgotten his armory. in the midst of everything else that's going on, which is a bit sloppy. One thing we saw Hero Marine always good on throughout the whole series was starting 2-2 pretty much immediately when 1-1 finished. He'd always have a great 2-2 timing on his bio upgrades. Once again though, Major continuing the plan. Drop in the back, try to pull the army out of position, while thrusting down the left flank with this other army. Now this particular army here is a little bit light. He probably doesn't actually want to commit too deep with this. And if there's one problem Major has, and we will touch on it a bit later as well, is sometimes he gets a bit overeager and actually throws his siege tank count away. So as good as it is to be attacking, at a certain point you do need to think about whether it's a good time to trade or not. Now this worked out because he was already so far ahead and in such a good position. But if Hero Marine had just a few more units, he could have just pounced on this, and suddenly Major's throwing away tanks to not really get a lot of damage done. Does manage to pick those up while dropping in the natural, and if you ever let Major start to run away with a game, he's going to run away with it real fast, just with this constant 1-2 aggression, hitting the front, dropping in the back, and you know, from there he's just going to keep running in from every angle and steadily overwhelming. So this game, the real story was just opening up with a very flexible opening of double gas into a command center, and going for that single siege tank for marine pressure into just constant Banshee, cloaked Banshee harassment, while being a bit greedy behind it. A little bit greedy, not insanely greedy, but a bit greedy. Taking the third on location always, and that sort of thing. We're also going to take a look at some of his other games, and we're going to kind of look at a few of the different varieties of other kind of very technical pieces of harassment which he throws in there. We already saw him do this, these pushes, like this 3-tank push where we're saying, you know, he could have thrown those away. But he's very good at picking up and kind of keeping the tanks alive, and one thing he's really annoying with is even when he doesn't have those Marines yet, he will push with those tanks as long as he's got medevacs to kind of boost them up and keep them alive. And just kind of overwhelm here. Dive on in. And that one's going to be a GG. Alright. Okay. Tanky danks. Yes, indeed. Alright, so that's kind of constant Banshee production. This is just kind of like, I kind of like the feel of that game to kind of set the pace as well for Major kind of just showcasing this constant aggression. That was game 1 of the set as well, which he did win versus Hero Marine. As we said, it's too late for spoilers now. It was the only game which he won in the set. But I still really like just all the cute little maneuvers in these other games. So next we're going to take a look at Frozen Temple. And he does one move which I'm sure I've seen before. I'm pretty sure it was TY who did this. Trying to remember the map that I saw TY do it on. But just a really cool piece of aggression which I wanted to look at. By the way, guys, if you have questions, please shout them out in chat. As I said, we're going to be doing a shorter episode today, so I won't be going for too crazy much longer. With that build order, by the way, for that first game, I do have that build order written down in the notes, which will be going up on Team Liquid, as well as, well, yeah, it'll be going up on Team Liquid. Now, I'm not showing you the game because I'm just fast-forwarding to the points I want. Okay, yeah, cool. So, let's take a look. This is so cute. This is just one of those things where it's like, oh my god, this is so hilarious that the first time I saw this I thought this was amazing. And now that Major's trying to pull it off as well, it's really cool. So what you do is you open up with your cloaked banshees, right? Oh, he actually cancelled cloak in this game. I think because maybe he saw banshees coming in response or something. For whatever reason, he's decided to get himself a raven. But the idea is you open up with a banshee and a cyclone. Now, a cyclone's a fantastic defensive unit in TvT. I love opening Cyclone almost every game in TvT because I'm a noob who sucks at scouting and reading my opponent. And I just like things that keep me safe against a lot of different options. But Cyclones especially are great at shutting down enemy Banshees because they can lock on, combined with a Viking or two, you can scan, and there's no way that Banshee's getting out of that scan radius. But this is another really cute, aggressive usage. The idea is the Banshee comes in, lures the Viking out of the base, and then the Cyclone comes in when the Viking's a little bit too far out of the base, locks on, completely unexpected, and just blast the Viking out of the sky. Now, unfortunately for Major, Hero Marine turned around here just barely in time, and Major's a little bit too slow, doesn't quite manage to kill that Viking. But you can imagine just how annoying this is as the defensive player. Normally you want to get outside your base, you want to zone a little bit, you want to force the Banshees to cloak ahead of time, you want to see them coming in ahead of time. And just the idea of, like, if you go outside your base, this Cyclone's going to blast your anti-air is just this super cool little adjustment. And especially if Cloak is going down, you know, and there's more and more Banshees coming, you really get to see this work. Now, it didn't actually do a lot this game, partly because, like I said, he swapped out of the Cloak. I think it was just scouted really early. Like I said, we're not really caring about the build order. But if more and more Banshees keep coming in and you've got like a Cyclone, or sometimes you could even go, I think I saw TY do two Cyclones one time trying to do this. I'm not sure if it was like one on either side of the base on Sejong, or if it was like just two together trying to instantly kill Vikings. But it's just like the dirtiest move. If the defender gets slightly careless, bam, you snipe off that stuff. And once again, it's all about pinning your opponent inside their base and really kind of just forcing them to be uncomfortable. And once again, waves of aggression, waves of pressure, all to get map control. A Widow Mine here. Fortunately, Hero Marine recognized it and spread, otherwise he would have lost almost all of his Marines to this Widow Mine. But this is just Major to a T, and once again, his third base has landed so damn early. Just really wants to keep his opponent back and then do that. Now, the next wave of really cute pressure in this game is something he also uses on Frost. And this is something I also wanted to show because it's just another one of these incredibly annoying to deal with attacks, which has the potential to get huge damage. So what is this? 4 Vikings and a Raven. 6 Vikings. Swaps into 2 Medivacs. I definitely think he should have done it with 4 Vikings since he had the Raven. I think this was like... I don't think he needed the full 6, but he's going to pick up 2 tanks and come out across this map. And this is just your standard tank evac pressure, the same thing you see people do to Zerg. But he's got the Vikings and the Raven to maintain air control. Doesn't have any Marines to support or anything like that. But he can be so annoying with these tanks. Now, unfortunately, like I said, I do feel Major didn't necessarily execute the best this game. He just took a very long time with it and was very kind of careful. Which, let's face it, you'd rather be careful than throw your units away. And Major's 1,000 times better player than me. But you can just come in and be so annoying with these tanks. This fight here, though, I think a little bit messy. Those units were already on top. I think what he really wants to do is just shell on those SCVs, dance around the sides. He does still have this Banshee here, as well as his Vikings. He threw down like auto turrets, and I think, did he throw down a PDD there as well? He really should have thrown down a PDD. I think he might have just thrown auto turrets. No, he only used auto turrets. Yeah, to try and buffer. Unfortunately, a bit of a messy engagement here from Major, but I really want you guys to think about the potential for this sort of pressure rather than how we see it executed here. This is something you'll often see is pros or you know, commentators and stuff like myself, people getting kind of excited about things which don't work and look like utter crap. And like that pressure there looked like crap, right? But what you've got to imagine is you use this just like a tank evac pressure in TvZ, where you say, look, Stim's not done at this point in the game. Marines can't really rush forward to punish this, and that's like the only thing you don't really have an answer to, right? Your Vikings and your Raven are so good in the air, your tanks are so good at kind of out-positioning their tanks, because they can't pick up their tanks and just drop them in range. They'll get shot down by the Vikings. So it's just this very nice mixture of pressure, where you've got the superior range micro ability in the siege tanks combined with the superior anti-air. And it's just the same thing as your old school standard, I've got the air superiority so my tanks can edge in, but he's doing it with such little commitment. Just 2 tank evacs, just kind of coming in there, being as annoying as possible, and this can create so many opportunities for you to get damage done. So this sort of damage and just all these sorts of little waves of pressure, going there with a Banshee, and then trying to bait Vikings into a Cyclone, coming here with just the Viking Raven air superiority and double tank evac, all of this has huge potential to get damage done. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see it work out, and I definitely feel like Major started to kind of mis-execute a little bit as the series went on. I definitely felt like there were some more opportunities. And the reason we're not really necessarily talking about Hero Marine as much in this series and we're more talking about Major's aggression is, like I said, I was just very fascinated by all these different fancy types of aggression he was trying to execute. Hero Marine played much more of like a, I'm going to play standard and macro and just try to get into a very normal game. So we got to see like a very typical matchup between the player who's going to keep hitting you with waves of aggression, trying to throw you off while, you know, going to the standard macro game behind it, versus the guy who was playing like the much more stock standard TvT. And the thing is, even after that attack looked kind of crap, keep in mind, so many times we see this attack's not really trade out that well for Major, and behind it, he's up in workers, he's up in tanks, he's up in Marines. The only thing he's down in is that Viking count because he threw all those Vikings away. His upgrades are behind. As I said, Hero Marine always starts his 2-2 on time, whereas Major slipped up on that a few times, but he's got a 4th started. He's dropping at the same time. Unfortunately for him, Hero Marine just starts to lock everything down this game. Siege tank and a turret, a few Marines in position. He scans on the left at the same time to catch Major rotating, and his own army's like in position to respond. And Major starts to just kind of YOLO. This is one of these big fights, I think, where Major just kind of went in. I think, actually, let's go back a little bit. So, okay, this is actually what happened, and this is something which is really good movement from Hero Marine. Major sees the move in the middle, and he's like, shit, my army is out of position. It's not going to get back in time. That army can just thrust in here onto my 3rd, and I'm going to lose my 2nd factory. Everything's going to end up disastrous. So Major kind of reacts to this and goes, shit, scan the middle. He's dropping the main at the same time, and he says, okay, let's push up here. The mistake happens at this moment, where his scan sees the army retreating, and then he still commits. Keep in mind, there's 2 things at play here. Number 1, Major's army has been down here on this side of the map for like 2 minutes now. Every minute your army is out on the map, it's getting smaller and smaller, even if you're not losing units, just comparatively to what's being built. At this point in the game, so many more units have been built at home. If we look back at Major's base, he's got heaps of Marines and tanks coming out. This army is tiny compared to this big ball of Marines, these tanks coming in, these Vikings. Still 2 tanks sitting back here. And yet he's engaging in kind of banking on that Marine drop, getting a lot of damage while Hero Marine's distracted. I would say this is kind of Major's weakness, if there is one, is that sometimes he gets so caught up in attacking in multiple places, his frontal attack micro gets very sloppy because he's more focused in catching his opponent out of position than he is in executing his aggression correctly. And even though, as I said, he was up in supply, he was up in unit count, or the important unit count, the tanks anyway, even though he was down in Vikings, sometimes he very quickly just throws these games away. He does these pushes, especially throwing the tanks away, which don't necessarily make that much sense. And this is something we saw throughout the series, was Hero Marine just kind of played a punching bag style, which really is not recommended in TvT. But he just did the Rocky style, man. He just took a lot of punches, and he just waited until Major overstepped. And repeatedly in the series, we see it on Galactic Process as well, Major did kind of overstep and throw away a lot of siege tanks in a bad engagement. So as soon as Hero Marine kind of got a handle on all the multi-prong that was coming his way, he started to do really well. And we see here Major continuing to multi-prong, but just not enough units at home. Hero Marine dives on top. He's just got way too many siege tanks. And remember guys, siege tanks, especially with that +1 upgrade, They're going to wreck Marines. They're going to wreck other siege tanks. The +1 upgrade makes them take like just 3 shots to kill an enemy siege tank as opposed to 2. Sorry, as opposed to 4. So it makes them like 25%. Sorry, 33? Yeah, 20. My maths is so bad. I'm not going to do maths on stream. It makes it a lot more effective. Alright. And here a Marine closes that one out. Alright, guys. So that's most of the end of it. I am going to go in and look at another one of these tank drops, and another game where, you know, where Major did unfortunately drop down on Frost. But we're going to be answering questions while we look at it. We've already looked at kind of this technical layered aggression that Major loves to throw out. You know, in that game 1, remember, he gets the double Reaper and the Hellion. It's kind of a safety double Hellion and Reaper, but it very quickly bounces back after he catches Hero Marine's Reaper into an aggressive force. He follows up with a single tank drop, you know, kind of poking around, looking for that damage, fishing for that damage, but also putting on the pressure and really kind of confusing his opponent about what's going to be coming next. It makes it very difficult when you're thinking about a tank and Marines being very annoying. If you just let that kind of hang around your base too long, it's very easy to then be surprised by the first Banshees showing up with Cloak. Yep, awesome. So, and then also you've got that cool stuff, Banshees coming in, trying to lure Vikings into Cyclones. You've got 4 Vikings, 4 to 6 Vikings, potentially with a Raven if you want, combined with the 2 tanks. If you've got that air superiority, throwing in tank evac pressure can be amazing, even though it's very micro-intensive, of course. And, yeah. Generally just a lot of cool stuff. So shout out your questions with the @x5_pig tag in chat, and I'm going to try and answer those. Unfortunately, I've been having chat problems all day, but please do shout out some questions in there, and I'm going to see if I can get that working. Come on, chat. Okay, I think my Moobot's caught all the chat. Nope, my Moobot chat froze as well. I think they changed the API, didn't they, Twitch? So like I know they've been changing some stuff up. But yeah, guys, please shout out any questions and we'll see what we can get there. Mestru says 33% more effective. Okay, let's do maths on stream. So if it goes from 4 shots to 3 shots, doesn't that make it 25% more effective? Because I'm pretty sure that's 25% because it's 1 in 4 that it drops, right? Actually, no, even that's incorrect, actually, because then it changes to... Yep, I'm gonna leave that one. I'm gonna leave that one. I think it's 25%, but either way, it's pretty big. It looks like there's actually no questions right now. I mean, to be honest, I didn't expect many questions today because it's like, well, I'm literally just showing you some cool forms of harassment. While we finish up, let's talk about kind of executing this, putting it into practice yourself. So I'm a Bronze League Terran player. Should I be doing a 6 Viking and 2 tanky dank pressure? No, you shouldn't. That's really hard to execute. But I think once you hit about probably like roughly Platinum League, depending on your strength, maybe you can do it earlier based on how good your micro is. But there's lots of, there's lots of different cool things you can kind of try to execute and so on, but maybe just slow the pace down. You always want to play StarCraft at your own pace. So for instance, we can kind of just put this on Major's camera. Let's just go back a little bit. We'll put this on Major's camera so you guys have some StarCraft on screen. So one of the big things, right, is, yeah, well, this is crazy hard to execute. Major makes lots of mistakes, therefore I shouldn't do it my own. Yes, if you can't micro the units effectively at all, you shouldn't do it. But you know what? I'm sure there's plenty of Gold League players who could take nuggets of these technical bits of harassment and still execute them really well. Even maybe the occasional Silver player. The important thing is not to only focus on that and to kind of slow things down. For instance, if you're trying to emulate that game 1, the one where he's throwing out the Banshees constantly, that's one where you're going to have to use APM saving techniques. Things like using shift hold position to go and sit the Banshee over, say there's a missile turret there, you can just hold position the Banshee like here, and it'll automatically kill SCVs on the gas and the minerals, and you don't even need to look at it, and it's not going to kill itself. You can use these cool APM saving techniques like that. You don't need to babysit absolutely everything. And some of your attacks you can lose a little bit sloppily. Remember, Major repeatedly loses units sloppily throughout his games. Or sometimes not sloppily, sometimes it's just Hero Marine having really good defense. But like he uses, what I mean is he loses the units without doing damage. You look at it, you think he's got to do damage here. He doesn't do any damage, and then he's still fine. He's still up in supply. So the important thing is making sure you're macroing well behind it. You're spending your money, getting those third bases down really early, and not just using the direct damage of the aggression, but also using the indirect damage. So he opens space for himself, which allows him to get the faster third behind it. He opens space for himself, which allows him to be a little bit greedy at home. He also gets a lot of scouting information on what his opponent's up to. This game we're looking at here is actually a perfect example of where he unfortunately failed to kind of recognize what he was seeing, because he's up against a 2-base all-in from Hero Marine, and he gets all the information he could possibly want. Right here, he saw extra medevacs and tanks, he sees all these Marines and tanks, and if you're ever wondering, well, how do you know if it's an all-in or not? I can't just judge the number of units my opponent has. Well, just compare it to your own units. If you look back at home and you're like, I have 2 tanks and a Marine, and my opponent has 20 Marines and 4 5 siege tanks, I feel like my opponent's committing more to fighting than I am, right? You know, so it was just 5 barracks pumping out Marines and tanks, and this tank evac pressure, like Major actually does a really cute job with it, but he kind of fails to appreciate and respect that attack. So he says, okay, you know, we did some damage. He scans again, sees so many units moving out, and what he really needs to focus on is using his Vikings for air control. This is such an important piece of the puzzle, and just keep his tanks back and hold the choke points, and potentially even lift the third. Major kind of fails to respect what he's up against. Great Marine interception by Hero Marine. Snags every single Viking. Suddenly, there goes that advantage, and we've got Major with 5 siege tanks and 5 Marines versus 5 tanks and 39 Marines. So, you know, he's trying to kind of move forward and poke with these tanks, which is cute, but it's not the most important thing. The important thing was for him to have all of his tanks together. Whoops. All of his tanks together, defending one tight space. So I definitely think, you know, you've got to use that information to recognize what you're up against. In this particular game, Major didn't kind of recognize just how all in Hero Marine was. Thought he could just kind of defend 3 bases, and it was like, no man, you're versus 2 base all in. You need to like defend up on your cliff in your main base. You need to like just defend 2 bases, wait for a few more Marines to get out, and every second that goes by, you're going to get further ahead. Losing the Vikings really was the nail in the coffin, because now you see these tanks, these medevacs are able to just move up with impunity. If there was 4 Vikings there the whole time, all the medevacs would be blasted down by now. And even if Major took some losses, he'd have a 3rd orbital dropping mules, and he'd be in a pretty good spot. Cubicus says, if I want to be more aggressive, should I focus on APM or builds? I mean, definitely you always want to try and get more done with your actions, but builds are how you increase the speed at which you play the game. Like, you know, refining what you're doing and learning habits, and you don't always need to have everything be completely exact, but you always want to refine what you're doing. You know, a build is a sort of game plan which you can work on and refine. And if you can work on that, it can make a massive difference. So definitely working on that is really good. Rowan says, how cheeky is building Vikings and then flying into their base to snipe units as they come out the starports on a scale of 1 to Apollo? I'd say it's about 9 Polo. It's a good Apollo rating. If you fly into their base with Vikings, like it's pretty damn greedy. If they've got a Cyclone on the ground, it's going to snipe you down. If their Marines flank you at all, Vikings are really slow. So it's not something you should really be getting away with. Alright guys, anyway, we are going to finish up the show here. You can see here, of course, I think this was the last game, which is why Major was like hanging in it so long. Also because he had that 3rd down, which finally the Marines went into and killed. And Hero Marine ended up winning it. Alright, so some cool different things you can mix in there. I didn't actually look at the Galactic Process replay, but I really felt like I said that like that was a game where I think everything was going really well for Major. And then he kind of set up to siege on one of the bases, and then he just stayed there way too long. Remember on that first Sejong game where he came forward and he was like sieging the base, and then like the Vikings landed and he killed almost all of them and almost all of the Marines. And it was just like, yeah, like you just killed a lot of stuff. This is a great trade. In other games, sometimes he stays there too long. He just stays there. the Terran doesn't engage. He's like picking off a refiner, and he's like, cool. And then he just stays there another like minute or two. And then we see her Marine just swamp over, kill all his siege tanks at the front. And from then on out, like Major's like a little bit behind in tanks. And then he kind of, the moment he's pushed back on the defensive, he looks very uncomfortable in how he takes engagements. Like you can kind of tell all of his engagements are focused around attacking and having his opponent out of position. So I think if there's one thing Major could probably could have done to maybe turn that series around was just being a little bit more patient with some of his engagements. Obviously, I'm no TvT absolute godlike expert by any means, and I'm sure he probably has a lot more insight into what he sees as going wrong. But definitely something which is all right. So guys, thanks for hanging out. Tomorrow we're going to be doing Icy Far, and it is going to be the public test map. So that should actually be awesome fun. And sorry, just kind of struggling with my chat disappearing here. It's really, really distracting and annoying. But there we go. We've got it up now. So anyway, guys, thanks for hanging out. We'll be back tomorrow normal time, IC5. We're going to look at some of those test map games and see how it goes. So that's all for now. Don't forget to hug a watermelon, kick a walrus, and of course, punch a watermelon to the moon. I'll catch you guys next time. Goodbye and good night.